And gentlemen, Mr. Star here again for you, and we are going to be looking at the Roman world. We're going to go all the way from the Roman Republic to what eventually would become the Roman Empire, and in case all of this territory you see right here. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Roman world. Starting off with the Roman Republic first, you can see some of the things that we're going to be talking about today: development of civilizations in the Mediterranean around the Roman Republic to Empire, some of the characteristics of the government types there, and we'll get into some of the characteristics of the civilization of the Roman Empire / Republic as well. So if we look at how was Rome founded, there's two stories. One of those is a mythical story, kind of what we talked about with the Greeks, the myth versus real. The mythical story of the founding of Rome was that there was two boys, and those two boys were orphaned, and they were eventually raised by a pack of wolves, and their names were Remus and Romulus. Now, we know that that's probably not true, but if we look at the historical idea of the founding of Rome, we look at actually the Greeks being involved here. All right, Latins from the north, who had our Latin written language, take over kind of the Italian peninsula, or what we know as the Italian peninsula. We also have Etruscans who came into that area, and the Greeks settled the south territory of Italy and the island of Sicily as a colony. And so many different ideas kind of came together and blended together, and we know that the Greeks lent a lot of their myth and their war strategy and their government ideas to the Roman Republic and eventual empire. So if we look all the way back, we know that Rome is known for being a massive empire, but there was also a democracy involved there prior to that. And so if we go way back and look at the types of government they used, the Roman landowners eventually gained enough power that they decided to overthrow the king, the Etruscan kings who had come to power in that territory. So the landowners, the people, kind of overthrow the Etruscan king, and we start to see the creation of a republican government. All right, it's the same thing that the United States uses today. We are a republic, and so the Roman Republic was created at that time. Voters elected officials. That's essentially the idea of what a republican government is. We elect officials to go be our democratic voices in Washington, D.C. The same thing happened here in the Roman Empire, or excuse me, Roman Republic. And so the Senate was the most powerful of the elected bodies here. There was also consuls. Each senator elected or selected two consuls for them as well. And in times of war, there could be a power used called that they could create for a dictator. One of the senators could be elevated to kind of a dictatorial power so that they could make decisions quickly. All right, because we know that in democracies and republics, decisions aren't always made quickly. And so in a time of war, for 6 months at a time, you could elect this dictator, essentially, who could make the decisions for the Roman Republic. As a result of this, the government was controlled by the upper class, and we see what we call the plebeians. The plebeians become kind of upset that all the control was at the upper class. The plebeians are kind of the middle class group of people here in the Roman Republic at this time. So if we take a closer look at the plebeians also demand equality eventually. The plebeians encompassed all the groups of people who were farmers, merchants, artisans, and traders. And so by the year 450 BCE, they decided that they would like to also help control the government. They wanted a voice in government. And so they end up going through the laws of the 12 tables. And so basically what it is they're able to ask for power from the patricians or the people who are in power at this time, and they decided that the plebeians should also have the right to govern. And so at the laws of the 12 tables, that is decided. So as a result, they're able to gain control of the government without having to have a bloody revolt or war. And so we see kind of a massive republic, a massive democracy starting to develop here in the Roman Republic. We also look at the idea that the Romans become masters of warfare. All right. Anyone who was a landowner in Rome was also required to serve in the military. And so they had a citizen army, and the citizen army was called a legion. And a legion consisted of 5,000 men who were drafted into that war, or into that battle. And so as a result, by the year 270 BC, Rome had conquered essentially all of what we consider to be Italy today. And so when we look at the conquered lands that they controlled, they actually treated the people in that area with justice. They weren't ruthless. They weren't harsh to them, other than the fact that they conquered them. But they granted those people in Italy Roman citizenship. And if they were people that were conquered in faraway lands, they granted them partial citizenship. So they actually became citizens of the Roman Republic, and they had representatives who then were elected to serve them in the Senate. One thing that they had to do if they were going to be a part of the Roman Republic was they had to pay taxes to Rome. And another thing they had to do was they had to supply Rome with soldiers. All right, like we said, citizen army. So you have a legion. Everyone has to serve. So in addition to the soldiers and the taxes, the benefit of being a part of the Roman Republic was protection. They were able to protect these conquered lands from all other groups that may want to come in and do them harm. Soldiers and roads obviously became important because they were able to march those soldiers all throughout their territory of Italy, through these roads that they actually put up or created to protect all these distant lands. And so as a result, trade and travel start to increase throughout the peaceful area that the Romans are controlling, and we see unity across all of their territory. Now, eventually what's going to happen is the Romans decide that they want to expand further than just the Italian peninsula. And so if you look at the map right there, we do have the green Italian peninsula, the territory that Rome controls here, right around the year 264 CE. And so if we take a look, they set their sights on a nearby rival, and that rival is known as Carthage. Right now, Carthage is actually the actual home territory of Carthage is located in North Africa. You can see all the orange on the map is Carthage and the territory that they control. They were kind of the superpower civilization of the Mediterranean at this point. They had a very large population. They had very well-developed cities. And the city of Carthage itself had very tall protective walls. And it was a very, very safe harbor. They were wealthy because they controlled trade all throughout the Mediterranean at this point. Well, they also controlled the island of Sicily. And Rome was afraid that Carthage was just too close to their capital of Rome, and they were too close to their territory. And so they decided to try to push them back from Sicily. And so we end up with what we call the Punic War, at least the first Punic War. The Punic Wars are a series of wars that Rome and Carthage will have against each other. In the first Punic War, the Romans want Sicily. They build a navy. They actually emulate the Carthaginian navy at this time, although the Romans didn't really know how to fight at sea. And so they ended up fighting a lot of their sea battles kind of like land battles. They would march their legion or their troops onto these ships. They would ram the Carthaginian ships, and then they would march them off onto the other ship to fight. All right. Eventually, what ends up happening at this sea battle is Carthage really just wants peace. They're not willing to fight over the land for Sicily here, and the Romans gain a victory. This is the first time now, because Sicily at this point wasn't technically part of Italy or the Italian peninsula. This is the first time now that the Romans gain territory outside of Italy with this victory. All right, so that's the first Punic War. We will see there's another Punic War, actually two more that happen after this. In the second Punic War, Carthage isn't happy that they were attacked by Rome. And so they send their major general at this time, Hannibal, the leader of the Carthaginian army, and he actually is going to go on a massive expedition to try to surprise attack Rome at this point. So in the year 218 BCE, he actually begins a daring expedition, which we can see on this other page right here. He kind of goes across North Africa, and he lands in present-day Spain, and that red line follows his path all the way to Rome that he goes on there. And so he marches by foot, horse, and elephant over the Alps to try to sneak attack and hit Rome from the north. Now the problem here is there's a couple issues. Number one, he does achieve his goal of a surprise attack, and Rome is caught completely off guard. They had no idea that someone was going to attack them from the north at this point. The problem is, as he marched his troops and his horses and his elephants over the Alps, he lost a lot of people, a lot of soldiers, a lot of horses, and a lot of elephants. Elephants don't do real well on mountains. And so he lost so many troops that by the time he got to Rome, he was not able to destroy the city or sack the city. He was really only able to kind of pester the Romans. And so he destroys the farm fields all around Rome. He's kind of trying to starve them out. He's using some strategy. Rome swears revenge on Hannibal and Carthage. And the battle for Italy begins here. Hannibal is winning, but again, he cannot take Rome itself. Rome ends up attacking Carthage. They believe that the best defense is a good offense. And so they send their navy across to attack Carthage. In that process, the Carthaginians order Hannibal to return home and defend the city-state of Carthage itself. And the result here is peace terms. All right, the war, Second Punic War comes to an end. Carthage loses all of their land except for the land that they control in Africa. They have to pay taxes or tribute to Rome. And Rome is now the most powerful civilization in the Mediterranean. Now, when we go back to Hannibal, Hannibal didn't make it home. He ends up remaining free. He ends up kind of running around the Italian countryside trying to harass the Romans. And eventually, instead of being captured and most likely executed by the Romans, he eventually poisons himself before he can be captured. And so Hannibal, great leader, great strategist here when we talk about the military, ends up dying at his own hand. That leads us to the third of the Punic Wars. Rome is not done. After Hannibal's death, they decide that they cannot forgive Carthage for what they did by surprise attacking them. And so they decide that Carthage must be destroyed. So as a result of that, Rome attacks the city-state of Carthage. The only territory they control is at Africa at that point. They destroy the city, and Carthage becomes a Roman city at this point. And so the Romans take control of all the land that Carthage had once controlled. And you can see on this map here, anything that is gray or pink is now controlled by Rome. So Rome has expanded very, very quickly their territory, their power, their wealth at this point in history. So that expansion did affect Rome in both positive and negative ways. We know that, again, they gained more power, they gained more wealth. But on the home front, domestically, they had a lot of issues. They had both social and economic problems. There was a new class of people that were starting to kind of pop up in Rome, kind of a middle class. Smaller farmers had problems. Hannibal had just destroyed a lot of the farmland, and so they were having a hard time farming. They were having a hard time feeding the people of Rome. Rome's a massive city. They rely on people and trade to bring in the crops and the food that they need. And two men tried to create some reforms in the Roman Republic, in the Senate at this time. The first is Tiberius Gracchus. And he wanted to change and have reforms in place to help the people of Rome, the actual people, the citizens of the city-state itself. Unfortunately, he ended up being clubbed to death by the senators as he was trying to make these reforms. His brother, Gaius Gracchus, has kind of the same fate here. He also wants to aid small farmers, and he wants to aid the lower classes by helping them and making sure that everyone has what they need. He is also killed in a riot. And so the two men that were attempting reforms, both are killed. And we see that Rome is essentially plunged into centuries of civil war. Different senators kind of rising to power and trying to take more control over the other senators, and kind of a general chaos during this time. One senator rises from kind of the ashes of everything going on here and really starts to claim more and more power. And that senator is Julius Caesar. From all the chaos, Caesar kind of started to come to power and claim some of this power at this time. Every senator, it sounds weird, but every senator had their own military at this point in history. And Caesar actually takes this opportunity here to claim power in this case. So he crosses his military across the Rubicon River, which was essentially declaring war on Rome itself, on the Republic of Rome. Military powers were not allowed inside the city. The Rubicon is the river that kind of guards the city. And so he crosses the Rubicon River with his military. He declares war on the Roman Republic, and two other senators join with him, and they call themselves the Rule of Three with their militaries, and they defeat the Republican leaders who were in place at the time. Now, as Julius Caesar gains more power and likability here amongst the people and popularity, he actually installs Cleopatra, one of his allies, on the throne in Egypt. And he starts to put in place reforms and starts to help the people, some of the things that the Gracchus brothers were trying to do. But he gains a lot of power in this time period. In fact, he gains so much power that people are starting to wonder if he's trying to become a dictator. And so what happens here, the story is that here's a soothsayer comes and talks to Julius Caesar. And the soothsayer is someone who can read the future. And the soothsayer says to Julius Caesar, beware the Ides of March. Right? The Ides of March are the 15th, 16th, 17th of March. And he tells him that those are going to be terrible days for him. And so what ends up happening on the Ides of March is Julius Caesar comes into the Senate chambers and is promptly assassinated by the other senators because they believed he was trying to become a dictator and destroy the republic and destroy democracy. And so we end up with a battle between Caesar's followers and the other side of the coin here, the other Republican or Republic leaders here at this point. So you have Mark Antony versus Augustus. And Antony and Cleopatra end up kind of fleeing together and trying to get away from the powers of Augustus and who is actually Julius Caesar's young protege. And so Antony and Cleopatra end up committing suicide before Augustus's military can track them down. And Augustus wins the battle for power here, and he proclaims himself the first emperor of Rome. And so we have the death of democracy, the death of the Roman Republic, and the rebirth of the Roman Empire. And so 500 years of republic come to an end with Augustus, and he takes the name Caesar Augustus. And we know that the term Caesar also becomes the idea of like emperor or kind of king at this point, essentially. So was imperialism actually successful in Rome? Well, it turns out it actually probably was. If we look at it, they had a lot of problems as they were a republic, but as they transition into becoming an empire, we have a stable government, and that stable government is able to enact all kinds of economic reforms and make things better for the people overall. There are good emperors and there are bad emperors. Some of the most notable good emperors are men like Hadrian or Marcus Aurelius. We also have some bad emperors who were known to be very ruthless and basically kind of hated a lot of the people. And we have Caligula and Nero that come off as being kind of the bad emperors. There are all kinds of emperors here. But what we do know as looking at imperialism as a success in Rome is that Rome entered this time of peace. They call it the Pax Romana. And it's about 200 years from Caesar Augustus all the way to Marcus Aurelius, where we have this peaceful time all the way from the Tigris-Euphrates River in what we talked about as Mesopotamia, all the way to Britain. The entire territory that Rome had conquered and controlled at this point was peaceful. And during that time, ideas flowed from one spot to another, and we see a lot of prosperous time here for the people of the Roman Empire. So when we look at Roman society under the Pax Romana, we see advances in education and law. We see changes in religion, where we'll see brand new religions starting to burgeon at this point. We'll talk more about later on. We see the roles of women start to change. We see entertainment and welfare starting to change at this time too. In fact, they put in place a welfare program. All right, and we do know that there is one idea they talk about as how to keep the people happy in Rome when we look at the Roman society, and it's the idea of bread and circuses. Make sure people are fed and make sure that they are entertained. So ladies and gentlemen, lastly here, I just want you to go through and answer these I can statement summaries and just probably just a complete sentence or two for each one. And we will see you next time.